My name is Acacia Myers. I'm 34 years old and I'm an accountant, which means I knew exactly what $145,000 looked like on the day my mom decided it belonged to my sister. It was a Tuesday in June. I was at my desk reconciling a client's payroll when my mom's name lit up my phone and her voice came through bright as a parade. "We added Daphne to the account, sweetheart, so she can finally get her start." I watched the cursor blink on my screen. Then I said, "Funny, I cashed it all out. There's $8.50 left." But here's what none of them knew. The money was never the worst part. The worst part was a single sheet of paper with a doctor's signature on it, from a doctor who never wrote it. What my family did next put my own mother across a table from a fraud investigator, and put me in front of a choice I wouldn't wish on anyone. If stories like this one speak to you, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe, because you won't want to miss how this ends. To make sense of that phone call, I have to take you back to March. I live alone in a small apartment in German Village, on the south side of Columbus, with a gray cat named Ledger and a spice rack organized alphabetically. I do taxes for a living. I find the missing penny. It's not glamorous, but it bought me a quiet life, and I earned every inch of it: scholarship, night shifts at a diner, an entry-level cubicle, 12 years of showing up. In my family, though, my job title was never accountant. It was the responsible one. That title came with duties nobody ever listed out loud. I did my parents' taxes every spring, free of charge, at their kitchen table in Grove City, 20 minutes from my place. When my sister's car loan needed a cosigner last year, guess whose name went on the line? When Daphne's gym membership started billing my card, "A temporary thing," she said. It stayed temporary for 14 months. I paid, I fixed, I smoothed. And I told myself that was love, or at least the closest version of it my family stocked. Here's the thing about being the responsible one. You don't get thanked, because responsibility is treated like weather. Nobody thanks the sky for raining. My mom called me her rock, and I never noticed that rocks are things people stand on. That March, I was 34, single, steady, the daughter with the spreadsheet heart. I thought my place in the family was solid. In my family, there were two kinds of children, and I was about to find out, the hard way, which kind gets protected. The account started with my grandmother. Nana June was my mother's mother, a woman who ironed dish towels and paid cash her whole life, and she was the one person in my family who ever really saw me. In 2000, when I was 8, my grandfather's small life insurance paid out, and Nana took $5,000 of it and opened an investment account in my name. A custodial account, the kind a parent manages until the child grows up. My mom was listed as the custodian, since Nana didn't trust paperwork she couldn't iron. I still remember what Nana told me, her hand on my shoulder like a clothespin. "This is for the one who counts pennies. One day they'll all count on you, honey. Make sure you still have some left." When I turned 21 in 2013, the account transferred to me alone, the way the law says it must. By then, it had grown to around $11,000. I treated it like a garden. $500 a month at first, $800 once I got promoted, 12 years of automatic transfers and boring index funds, right through every market panic. By this spring, it sat at $145,000, my retirement, my proof that a diner girl could build something. But in my mother's mouth, it never had my name on it. She called it the family fund, light as a joke, every single time. Once, years ago, I corrected her. "It's my retirement account, Mom." And she laughed the way you laugh at a child who says something adorable and wrong. "Family doesn't keep score," she said. I remember thinking it was a sweet saying. I hadn't done the math on it yet. Now, let me tell you about my sister. Daphne is 29, 5 years younger than me, and she has been about to find her path for a full decade. First, it was the candle studio. My parents covered the lease when it folded after 8 months. Then the life coaching certificate, $4,000, paid for out of my mom's savings, which produced exactly one client, who was our aunt. Then came resin art. Then a podcast that never aired. Every one of these chapters began with a family dinner where Daphne glowed and ended with a quiet transfer of somebody else's money. She lives in my parents' basement in Grove City, rent-free, in a bedroom my dad drywalled for her when she was 30 days from eviction. I want to be fair here, because fair is my job. Daphne isn't cruel. She's what happens when nobody ever lets a person hit the ground. She never learned where the ground is. My mother built her a world with no floor and no bill, and my sister decorated it. That spring, the new dream was a wellness studio. Daphne Wellness. There was a logo already, sage green, a little sprig of eucalyptus over the D. She talked about manifesting and grand openings. Nobody mentioned money, which in my family is how you know money is the entire subject. Then, on a Wednesday in March, my mom texted me. Sunday dinner, 6 o'clock, family business to discuss. I sat in my parked car and read that text 3 times, and I felt my stomach do the thing it does during an audit when the numbers are about to go sideways. Because in my family, the phrase family business had only ever meant one thing: my wallet. Sunday, 6 o'clock, the good tablecloth. That alone told me the ask was big. My mother deploys linen the way generals deploy artillery. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, my dad Walt already studying his plate like it owed him an apology. Daphne practically vibrating. My mom Lorraine waited until dessert, then folded her hands. "We've been talking," she said, and the we did not include me. "Daphne's studio needs 60,000 to open right, and honey, your investment account is just sitting there." She said it the way you'd say the ladder is just sitting in the garage, and she even knew the balance. Near enough. I had listed the account myself on the asset worksheet at our big paperwork day in 2021. One tidy line I'd regretted ever since, and my mother had clearly kept compounding it in her head. I set down my fork. I kept my voice level, because level is the only speed I have. "That account is my retirement, Mom. It started with Nana's money. The answer is no. But I'm happy to help Daphne build a real business plan." Silence you could balance a spoon on. Daphne's chin trembled on cue. My dad reached for more potatoes he didn't want, and my mother smiled at me. Soft, disappointed, endlessly patient, a smile she'd been perfecting since my allowance days. Acacia, family doesn't keep score. There it was again, that pretty little sentence, and for the first time I heard the fine print inside it. I said no twice more before I left, clearly incomplete sentences. I even hugged everyone goodbye. Driving home to German Village, I told myself it was settled, that no was a full answer, that grown women don't need permission slips for their own money. But at the door, my mother had squeezed my hand and said, "We'll figure something out." We. She wasn't asking anymore. I just didn't know yet what she thought there was left to figure. The weeks after that dinner were quiet, which should have been my first clue. My family does not do quiet after a no. Instead, my mother got curious about my health. She called on a Tuesday to ask if I was sleeping. She called the next week to ask if work was stressing me, if I still saw Dr. Hartwell over on Livingston, if I was taking anything. My mom has asked about my blood pressure maybe twice in 3 decades, so this new bedside manner sat on me like a wet coat. Then Daphne texted asking whether I still had the folder from our family paperwork day. Copies of everyone's documents, from back when we did all that planning after Nana's stroke. She said Mom wants to update the file. I told her I'd look. And then I sat very still. Because here's what I do for a living. I reconcile. I take 2 sets of records that are supposed to match, and I find the place where they don't. Sudden concern about my sleep, from a woman who calls stress a rich person's hobby. Questions about my doctor. A request to round up documents. Individually, small change. Added together, a discrepancy. That night, I pulled my personal file box down from the closet shelf, the one with the good hanging folders, and I went through it with a highlighter like it was a client under audit. Passport, deeds, insurance, and there, in the estate planning folder, a copy of a document I had signed in 2021 and mostly forgotten. Pages that suddenly felt warm to the touch. I stood in my kitchen doing the one thing accountants do best. I started an audit of my own family. The original of that document wasn't in my box. It was in my mother's house. I drove to Grove City that Saturday and found my dad in the garage, half inside the hood of the 1987 Bronco he's been restoring since I was in high school. That truck is where he lives, if we're being honest. The house belongs to my mother the way a courtroom belongs to a judge. I brought him coffee and stood there while he fussed with a carburetor. Dad, what is Mom planning? He wiped his hands on the red rag, slow, buying time by the yard. Planning? Dinner, probably. Meatloaf. Dad. He looked at me then, and my father has these pale, tired eyes that always seem to be apologizing for something they won't name. Your mother handles the paperwork, Acacia. Always has. You know that. That one sentence was the whole man. An excuse, a filing system, and a confession, all folded together, and I wouldn't understand the confession part for months. I asked if Daphne's studio was still happening. He said your mother thinks it'll be good for her, and the your mother did a lot of quiet work in that sentence. We stood in the smell of motor oil, and I almost told him about the phone calls, the questions about my doctor, the little hairs standing up on my arms, but you can't hand a fragile thing to a man whose hands are always full of engine. I hugged him and got in my car. And as I backed out of the driveway, my dad set down the rag and called after me, louder than he ever talks. Whatever happens, Acacia, your mother loves you girls the same. I drove home with those words rattling in the back seat. People don't say whatever happens unless something is scheduled to happen. The call came on a Tuesday night in April, while I was washing one plate and one fork, the dishware of a woman living exactly the life she can afford. I missed it. What I got instead was a voicemail, 4 minutes long, from my mom's number. She had pocket-dialed me from her own kitchen. I stood at the counter and listened to pans clattering, water running, and then my mother's voice, casual as a grocery list, talking to my sister. Once we're on the account, the studio deposit goes out first. Then we'll see about the rest. A cabinet door. Daphne's voice, smaller. What if she finds out? And my mother, with no more weight than she'd give a weather report. By then it's done, Daph. She'll be angry, then she'll get over it. She always does. I played it twice. The second time, I wasn't listening for the plan. I was listening to that last part. She always does. There it was. My entire job description in this family, printed on a 4-minute voicemail. Get angry. Get over it. Get billed. I want to be precise about what I felt, because it wasn't rage. Rage is hot. This was the cold that comes off a ledger that finally balances after years of forced errors. The terrible relief of a number that stops lying. On the account. My account. The one with Nana's $5,000 still in its bones. I didn't know yet how they thought they could get on it. That was the piece that didn't reconcile. The door I couldn't find. I saved the voicemail. Not as a weapon. I already understood no court cares about kitchen noise. But as an anchor, so that no matter what got said to my face later, I would never again doubt my own arithmetic. My best friend from college is a woman named Marisol Vega, and God had the good sense to make her an estate's attorney. Wednesday, lunch hour, a coffee shop near the courthouse. I slid my phone across the table and let her hear the voicemail through my earbuds. Marisol has a poker face you could land planes on, but I watched her jaw set. Okay, she said. First, breathe. Second, this recording is a warning, not a case. There's no crime on it. Intending to get on an account isn't a crime, and the police will not care about your mother's kitchen. Then how would they even do it? I asked. It's an individual account. My name only. I checked the titling twice. Marisol stirred her coffee, thinking, and then asked the question that rearranged my whole spring. Acacia, after your grandmother's stroke, when your family did that big paperwork day, what exactly did you sign? The coffee shop got very loud and very far away. In 2021, when Nana June had her first stroke, the whole family sat with an attorney and did the responsible thing. Wills, health directives, and a springing power of attorney, a document that stays asleep unless two things happen. I become incapacitated, and a doctor certifies it in writing. The moment it wakes up, my agent can act on my money as if she were me. My agent, chosen back when the word felt like a formality, and my mother felt like my mother. Lorraine Myers. Marisol looked at me over her cup. Who keeps the original? She asked, gentle, like a nurse peeling back a bandage. My mom, I said. In the filing cabinet in her hallway. Neither of us said anything for a moment. If you've ever signed something because you trusted family more than you trusted your own gut, tell me in the comments that I wasn't the only one. And subscribe, because what my mother did with that one piece of paper still makes my hands go cold. I did everything right, and I need you to hear that, because what happened anyway is the point. Thursday morning, I took 2 hours of personal time and did what Marisol told me. I signed a revocation of that 2021 power of attorney in front of a notary, with Marisol's paralegal as witness. We mailed certified copies to the family attorney who'd drafted it and sent one to Whitfield Investments, the brokerage that had held my account since Nana opened it. I executed a brand new power of attorney naming Marisol, someone whose loyalty I'd never had to buy with obedience. I changed my passwords, set up alerts for every login and every request, moved my financial mail to a locked box. Textbook. Airtight. Except Marisol called me that Friday with the part they don't put in the textbook. The revocation is valid the moment you sign it, she said. But Whitfield is a machine. Documents go into a queue. A human has to scan it, index it, attach it to your profile. That takes days, sometimes weeks. If someone walks in first with the old POA and a doctor's letter saying you're incapacitated, the firm has to sort out the conflict. And while they sort, they freeze everything. Months, maybe. Lawyers. And you'd be the one proving you're competent. I sat with that. Frozen. Nana's seed money, my 12 years of $500 months, locked in a vault while my family argued in writing that I was too broken to speak for myself. I looked around my small, clean kitchen, at the cat, at the alphabetized spices, at the life I had built out of no inheritance except $11,000 and a clothespin grip on my shoulder. There was exactly one way to make my account not worth stealing. Empty it. People imagine that cashing out $145,000 feels like a heist movie. It feels like homework. I spent that entire weekend at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet because I don't do anything angry that I can do accurate. Which positions to sell? Which lots to pick? So the tax hit landed soft. What the capital gains would cost me come April. A real number. 5 figures worth of real, and I stared at it a long time before I typed, accepted next to it in my notes. Call it the price of a fireproof life. Monday, I opened a new account at Clearline, a different brokerage across town, titled In My Name Alone. No history, no family folklore, maximum security settings, a fresh email address that existed for money and nothing else. 2-factor everything, alerts on alerts. Then Tuesday night, with Ledger asleep on the chair beside me and my laptop glowing like a little altar, I pulled up the sell orders. All of it. Every boring, faithful index fund I'd fed since I was 21. My cursor sat over the confirm button, and I'm going to be honest with you about the one moment I wavered. It wasn't the taxes. It wasn't fear of my mother. It was that clicking that button meant admitting, in writing, to myself, that my family had become weather I needed shelter from. That the people who taught me to ride a bike were now a line item under risk. Nana June's voice came back to me then, hand like a clothespin. Make sure you still have some left. I thought, I'm trying, Nana. This is me trying. I clicked. The screen blinked once, polite as a bank teller, and the unwinding of my family began with the words, order received. The next 6 days were the strangest of my life, because they were completely silent and completely loud at the same time. Trades take time to settle. The market sells your funds, then the cash sits there catching its breath before it can move. So every morning I woke up, fed the cat, went to work, smiled at clients, and checked my balance like a farmer checking the sky. The account stood at $145,208.50 the day the selling started. Then the transfers began, in batches, wired to Clearline. 145 became 90. 90 became 40. Whitfield's fraud prevention desk actually called me on the second batch. A nice man reading a script. Large outgoing transfer. Verifying identity. Did I authorize this activity? Yes, I said. This is Acacia Myers. Yes, I authorize it. You have no idea what those words felt like in my mouth. I authorize it. After weeks of learning that somewhere across town, my own mother was assembling paperwork to say I wasn't competent to speak them. 40 became 12. 12 became 400. And then, on the last transfer, I did something no spreadsheet suggested. I didn't zero it out. I sat there with the cursor in the amount field, did one small piece of private math, and typed a figure that left exactly $8.50 behind, down to the cent, like a signature only two people alive could read. Then I closed the laptop and made tea, and my hands were steady, which frightened me a little. Why 850? Why not zero? Hold that question. Because some debts, no bank statement ever recorded, and only I had been keeping the books. Marisol came over that Friday with takeout and a legal pad, because that's her idea of a wellness check. She asked the obvious question between bites of pad thai. Why not confront them? Lay it out. Tell them you know. I'd thought about it plenty. Confront them with what? I said. A kitchen voicemail? Mom will cry, Daphne will post something about toxic energy, and Sunday dinner will taste like it always tastes. I've been having that conversation for 30 years, Mar. I could write both sides of it from memory. She nodded slowly. So what's the plan? Revenge? And I remember exactly what I told her, because saying it out loud was the first time I understood my own ledger. I'm not angry. I'm done being the bank. That weekend, done stopped being a mood and became a checklist. I called the credit union about the car loan I'd co-signed for Daphne and started the paperwork to get my name off at refinance. I canceled the card that had been quietly feeding her gym membership for 14 months. I emailed my parents, kindly and professionally, that a colleague of mine would be handling their taxes this year at the firm's standard rate. She's excellent, I wrote. You'll be in great hands. Small things, hinges, doors I had propped open with my own body since I was a teenager, clicking shut one by one, and the house of my family would not notice the draft until winter. Marisol watched me work through the list and asked one more question, softer. The 850. Why that number? I just smiled and topped off her wine. That number was a receipt only two people in the world could read, and one of them had forgotten she ever wrote it. I was 14 the summer I learned the house rules, though nobody posted them on the fridge. I babysat the Kowalski twins down the street that whole July, spit up, tantrums, a bit lip, the works, and by the end of it I had earned enough for exactly one thing I wanted. A movie ticket and a popcorn, with my two best friends before school started. $8.50, saved in a bank envelope in my sock drawer, counted so many times the paper went soft. The Friday of the movie, the envelope was empty. Daphne was 9. She'd found it, taken all of it, and spent it at the corner store on accessories for a doll she already had a shoebox full of. Tiny plastic shoes, a tiny plastic purse. I did what 14-year-olds do. I yelled, I cried, I demanded justice from the government of our house. And my mother knelt down, gathered thief and victim both into her arms, and delivered the verdict that would run my life for the next 20 years. Sisters share, Acacia. Family doesn't keep score. No one drove me to the movies, no one paid me back. My friends went without me, and Daphne's doll got a purse. It's such a small story. That's exactly why I'm telling it. Because the big betrayals never come first. They're just the small ones, compounding. Like interest nobody audits. So 20 years later, when I emptied that account down to the last transfer, I left the family exactly what the family had left me. They could have the $8.50. It was the only thing in that vault they were ever owed. And if my mother ever noticed the number and remembered, well, then she'd know the books had been open this whole time. May was the strangest month, because I was the only person at the table who knew the play had already ended. My mother turned sweet. Not regular sweet. Negotiating sweet. The kind that arrives with casseroles. She invited me to lunch twice. She compliments like other people leave fingerprints. And suddenly my hair looked healthy and my apartment sounded charming. Daphne posted a story with sage green graphics. Big things coming. My cousins liked it. My aunt commented a row of little sparkle emojis, and I sat in my kitchen watching a countdown only I could see, feeling like the one engineer who knows the bridge is already closed. I went to my dad's birthday dinner in the middle of the month and played my part. I brought the cake. I laughed at his joke about turning 63 in a 30-year-old truck. I did the dishes with my mother while she hummed. If you're wondering why I kept showing up, here's the truth. And it's the truth of every woman like me. I wasn't protecting the plan. I was saying goodbye, in installments, to something they couldn't see was ending. Then, over dish soap, my mother asked, light as lint, whether I could send her a photocopy of my driver's license and my insurance card. For the family file, honey, in case of emergencies. The family file. I dried my hands slow. I'll take care of my file, Mom. You've got enough to organize. A flicker crossed her face. One bead of a frown, gone under the next smile like a fish under ice. She patted my arm and changed subjects to Daphne's launch party. Driving home, I finally admitted what my body had known for weeks. Whatever the plan was, it had a deadline. I could feel it ticking. What happened during the first week of June, I didn't witness. I reconstructed it later, way you reconstruct anything. From documents, from timestamps, from the fraud file that would eventually carry my name as the reporting party. A package arrived at Whitfield Investments, sent overnight, professionally assembled. Inside was the 2021 power of attorney bearing my signature, the real one, notarized and legitimate. And behind it, stapled like a key behind a door, was a letter on medical letterhead. Hartwell Family Medicine, Livingston Avenue, my doctor's practice, or something wearing its face. The letter stated that the patient, Acacia Myers, was suffering from a major depressive episode with cognitive impairment, that she presented as high-functioning but was unable to manage her financial affairs, that, in the physician's judgment, activation of her durable power of attorney was medically appropriate. It was signed with a doctor's name and dated in late May. The same stretch of days my mother was complimenting my hair and asking for my driver's license. Attached was a cover sheet, typed, requesting that Whitfield recognize Lorraine Myers as acting agent and add Daphne Myers as an authorized party on the account, effective immediately, so the family could manage the situation with discretion. Discretion. I've read that cover sheet more times than I want to admit, and that word still puts frost on my spine. Here's the detail I keep coming back to, the one that tells you everything about how this was built. The letterhead was right, the margins were right, the clinical language ran smooth as tap water. Whoever composed that letter knew exactly what a doctor's stationery is supposed to look like. And my mother spent 19 years behind the front desk of a medical office, printing referral letters before she retired. I'm not saying anything, I'm just showing you the ledger. The first ripple to reach me was an email, automated, gray as gravel. Whitfield Investments. Documents have been received regarding your account and are under review. No details, no names, just the machine clearing its throat. I called the 800 number on my lunch break and got a polite young man who could only tell me that a power of attorney package was in processing and that a specialist would contact me if anything required my attention. A POA package. In processing. My revocation had gone in weeks earlier. But had it been indexed? Attached? Was it sitting in the same queue, 6 envelopes behind the knife aimed at it? I stood in the parking lot outside my office with the phone against my ear, and the specific helplessness of a person watching 2 documents race each other through a bureaucracy, one of them wearing her name, and the other one wearing her mind. I called Marisol. She was in court. She called back in 90 minutes, which I spent alphabetizing nothing. Her advice was the best kind. Unglamorous. Don't call them again, don't explain. From this second, everything in writing. If that package is what we think it is, the next call you get won't be from customer service. She was right, as usual, though even she didn't guess how fast. Before we go on, if this story is landing anywhere near your own life, do one thing for yourself this week. Pull out every document you have ever signed for family and read it like a stranger wrote it. Then subscribe and stay with me. Because the phone call that came next is the reason this story has a fraud file number instead of a family one. It was a Tuesday in June, mid-morning, payroll reconciliation open on my screen, when my mom called. And this is the moment you heard at the start. So let me give it to you whole. Her voice was bright as a parade, triumphant and tender at once, the voice of a woman delivering what she truly believed was good news. Sweetheart, it's done. We added Daphne so she can access your 145. The deposit for the studio goes out Friday. I know you were scared, honey, but one day you'll thank. Mom. I said it quietly, and something in my quiet made the parade stop. I looked at the cursor blinking in my payroll file, steady as a pulse, and I gave her the number the way I'd give it to any client. Funny, I cashed it all out. Weeks ago. There's $8.50 left in that account. The silence on that line had furniture in it. I could hear her breathing change rooms. No. No, you can't. That's the family fund. That's the family's. It never was, Mom. Ask Nana's paperwork. In the background, I heard my sister's voice go up like a kettle. She's lying. Check the app. Mom, check the app. And farther back, from some doorway, my father sang Lorraine in that low, useless way, a man patting a fire with a dish towel. My mother's voice came back shaking, and here is the part I need you to sit with, because I've sat with it for months. She did not say we're sorry. She did not say we were wrong. She said, "How could you do this to your sister?" To your sister. I ended the call the way you close a client file, said I loved them, and set the phone face down. My hands stayed steady until they didn't. 48 hours later, my phone rang again. An unknown number. Downtown Exchange. A woman's voice. Level as a ruler. Ms. Myers, Karen Voss, Fraud Prevention, Whitfield Investments. Do you have a few minutes to discuss your account? Karen Voss talked the way flat country looks. No hills, no valleys, just procedure stretching to the horizon, and I will be grateful to that woman's voice for the rest of my life. She walked me through it. When a power of attorney package claims a client is incapacitated, Whitfield doesn't just flip a switch, compliance verifies. A specialist had called Hartwell Family Medicine to confirm the letter, standard practice, a box to check. Except the practice had no record of it. The office manager pulled my chart while the specialist waited on hold. No such letter had been written. No such assessment had been made. The signature did not match the doctor's, and Voss read this part like a weather report. The physician whose name was on it was, quote, extremely concerned. The package had been moved to the fraud unit the same afternoon. Then she asked her questions, and they were gentle, the way scalpels are gentle. Ms. Myers, are you currently under any medical care that affects your ability to manage your finances? No. Did you at any time authorize anyone to represent you as incapacitated? No. Do you recognize the parties who submitted this package? And there it was, the question with my whole family inside it. I looked out my window at the parking lot, at a woman wrangling a toddler into a minivan, ordinary life proceeding at full speed, and I said yes. The submitting party was my mother. The added party was my sister. Voss didn't gasp. Fraud units don't gasp. I suspect they've heard the word mother more than you'd hope. She thanked me and said the file would be escalated and that I'd receive documents. Then, before hanging up, she said the sentence I didn't know I'd been waiting years for a stranger to say. Ms. Myers, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with this letter. She emailed me the scan an hour later. I want to tell you what it's like to read a document that erases you, written by people who taught you to read. I opened the PDF standing at my kitchen counter because sitting felt like agreeing to something. There was my full name, Acacia Rose Myers, the Rose from Nana June, spelled out in clean clinical type. Major depressive episode with cognitive impairment. The patient presents as high-functioning, unable to manage her financial affairs. Activation of the durable power of attorney is medically appropriate. I read it twice, and the room got very still, and Ledger came and sat on my feet the way he does when the air changes. High-functioning. Even my sanity, they graded by how useful it looked from the outside. And then the date snagged me. and wouldn't let go. The letter was dated the third week of May, Dad's birthday week. The week I brought the cake and dried the dishes while my mother hummed and asked about my sleep, my stress, my doctor, my driver's license. Every one of those questions lined up now like numbers in a column, and the column finally summed. She hadn't been worrying about me. She'd been drafting me, gathering specifics so the letter would sound like someone who knew the patient. And God help me, she did know the patient. She'd known the patient for 34 years. That's what I couldn't get past, standing there with my thumb hovering over the scan. This wasn't a stranger stealing an identity out of a mailbox. My identity was handed over from memory. The fonts were right, the margins were right, the tone was right. 19 years at a medical front desk teaches you exactly what paper has to look like for people to obey it. I closed the laptop and stood in my quiet kitchen, and out loud, to nobody, I said, "You wrote me a diagnosis instead of an apology." You'd think the fraud file would have humbled them into silence. Instead, my family reached for the only tool left in the drawer, the story. Within a week, my phone was a switchboard. My aunt in Dayton, voice syrupy with concern. "Honey, your mom says you've been struggling. Are you eating?" A cousin I hadn't heard from since her wedding. No judgment, but is it true you drained your savings and cut everyone off? The family group chat, I was still in it, which tells you how carefully the campaign was aimed, filled with my mother's posts. An old photo of me at maybe 19, washed out, unsmiling, captioned, "Please keep our girl in your prayers. Hard season. Prayer hands emoji. Do you see the architecture of it?" The same fiction they'd built to steal from me was now the alibi for having tried. I wasn't a woman whose mother forged a doctor's letter. I was a sick, unstable daughter who'd emptied her accounts in a manic spiral and run from the people trying to save her. And hadn't Mom been saying for weeks that she was worried? The forgery had become its own character witness. That's the part no fraud unit can prosecute. The way a lie about your mind gets laundered through casseroles and prayer requests until relatives you love look at you sideways at funerals for the rest of your life. I didn't respond in the group chat. I'm told my silence was discussed as further evidence of my condition. There is no move you can make against that game, which is exactly why I'd stopped playing it. I let the phone buzz itself to sleep on the counter. And then, on a Thursday evening, it buzzed differently. A text from my father. My father, who signs his own birthday cards with whatever pen my mother hands him. It said, "Call me. Just you." He picked the Home Depot parking lot on Stringtown Road, which is the most Walt Myers sentence I can say. Neutral territory, halfway between his house and mine, with lumber carts for cover. He was leaning against the Bronco when I pulled in, and he looked old in a way that had happened suddenly, like frost. He didn't do small talk, which is how I knew we'd arrived somewhere new. "The paper from the doctor," he said, eyes on the cart corral. "There's a line on the power of attorney form, witness. That's my handwriting, Acacia." I made myself breathe. "Did you know, Dad, what the letter said about me?" And my father, 63 years old, wiped his hands on his jeans out of pure habit, no rag anywhere, and said, "Your mother told me it was protection. Paperwork in case you burned out. You work so hard, honey, everybody knows that." She said the doctor was concerned and it was better to have things in place. I signed where she pointed. I thought it was insurance. I believed him, which was the worst part. Then he asked for the thing he'd actually driven out there to ask. Not "How are you?" Not "Is it true what the letter says?" Because he knew it wasn't. He'd watched me run his numbers every April for free, sharp as a blade. He said, "Don't make it big, Acacia. Whatever's happening with the money people, your mother's not sleeping. She's not eating right. This could really hurt her." I looked at my father for a long moment, and I finally saw his position on the org chart of our family. He wasn't on my mother's side. He was on the side of quiet. He always had been. And quiet is a side. I hugged him, because I'm still his daughter, and drove home. In my mailbox was a thick envelope from Whitfield. Affirmation of non-authorization. Signature required. Before I tell you what I signed, I have to tell you what my Aunt Deb told me, because it's the piece that keeps this from being a story about a monster, and I promised myself I'd tell it straight. Deb is my mother's younger sister, a retired nurse who says true things at inconvenient times, which is why she isn't invited to everything. She called me one evening, not to lobby, just to talk. "You know I'm not taking sides," she said. "But you should know where your mother learned the math." And she told me. In 1984, my mom was 19, working front desk at a doctor's office, saving for the nursing program that had already accepted her. Their father was gone by then. Their mother cleaned houses and came up short every single month, with 3 younger kids at the table. So every payday, my 19-year-old mother signed her check over. All of it. Nobody forced her, Deb said. Nobody had to. It was just understood. The strong one carries. And when she cried about the nursing program, your grandmother told her, "Lorraine, family doesn't keep score." I had to sit down on the arm of the couch. There it was, the sentence, 40 years older than me, passed down like a christening gown. Deb wasn't finished. Nobody ever paid her back, Acacia. Not a dollar, not a thank you. That's the thing about that family. They don't ask. They assign. I understood something then that I wish I didn't. My mother wasn't collecting money from me. She was collecting justice for a girl in 1984 that nobody ever paid back. And I was the only one at the table earning enough to cover a 40-year-old debt. Understanding is a strange gift. It explains everything and excuses nothing. When we hung up, the Whitfield envelope was still on my table, and it still required a signature. Marisol came over the night I signed it, and she did the thing good lawyers and good friends both do. She made sure I couldn't pretend I didn't understand. The affirmation was short. It said, in effect, "I, Acacia Myers, am not incapacitated." I did not authorize this power of attorney activation. The medical letter submitted on my behalf was not written by my physician. Marisol laid it flat on my kitchen table and talked me down each paragraph. Once you sign, Whitfield's obligations kick in. They're a regulated firm sitting on evidence of a forged physician letter. They refer it. That's not your choice or theirs. It's the rule book. And you should know the referral train has more than one engine now. Dr. Hartwell's office filed their own complaint days ago. It's their name on the forgery, their license, their stationery. This goes forward with you or without you. I asked her the only question left. Then what does my signature change? She looked at me the way she used to before final exams. Without you, it's a paperwork case. With you, it has a victim who says so. Your name makes it real, and your mother will know you made it real. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler ticked across the grass, the most ordinary sound on earth. I thought about Sunday dinners and the good tablecloth. I thought about the girl in 1984 handing over her paycheck, and the girl in 2006 with her soft-counted envelope, and how one of them had raised the other without ever once seeing the resemblance. Then I picked up the pen from my old firm and I signed my name. The whole thing, Acacia Rose Myers, the Rose from Nana, and we faxed it at 11:52 at night. 11 days later, a detective's card was in my mailbox, and before that same week was out, my mother was standing in my hallway, holding a Tupperware of soup like a white flag. Let me line up that week for you because it arrived all at once, like weather off the lake. Monday, the card in the mailbox, an economic crimes detective, Columbus Division of Police, with a case number and a handwritten note asking me to call about providing a victim statement. We scheduled it for the following Thursday. I had 10 days, and everyone in my family seemed to know the clock was running, though nobody would say how they knew. Tuesday, my father called. My father, who initiates phone calls the way other men write poetry, which is to say, never. No hello. If your mother ends up with a record, that's on you. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, and I answered him the only way that was still true. I'm not doing anything to her, Dad. I'm done being the bank. And I'm done being the alibi. Those are the only 2 jobs I'm quitting. He was quiet, and then he said my name once. Just Acacia. The way you'd say it standing next to a car you couldn't fix, and hung up. Wednesday, Daphne texted. A full paragraph, thumbs blazing. The heart of it. You've always had everything. Mom did it for me because you never would. You get to be fine no matter what. Some people need help, but I guess family only matters when you're the one keeping score. I read it twice and put the phone down. In the whole flood of that week, the calls, the texts, the group chat prayer hands, I want you to notice the same thing I finally noticed. Not one person, not once, said the word sorry. They negotiated, they accused, they mourned the consequences. The act itself had already been quietly voted out of existence. And then, Thursday evening, a week before my statement, my doorbell rang. My mother stood in my hallway in her church cardigan, holding chicken soup in a Tupperware with a burped lid, and for one dangerous second she just looked like my mom. "Can I come in, sweetheart?" She had never been inside my apartment. 5 years I've lived there. And she entered like a housing inspector, cataloging as she came. The curtains were thin, she noted. The building was old. Did the radiators bang? She found Ledger and called him a good boy in a voice I remembered from Scraped Knees, and Ledger, traitor to the cause, purred. "This is the ritual, if you didn't grow up inside one. Before a big ask, my mother surveys what you have, so the asking lands on softened ground. I put the kettle on because my hands wanted a job. I still keep a cup for her, you know. A specific one. Cream with blue cornflowers. Bought at a church sale years ago because it looked like her kitchen. 5 years it had waited in my cabinet for a visit that never came. And now here she was. And I set it in front of her, and hated how much the sight of it moved me. She talked about Nana June. Summers at Lake Erie, the cottage with the crooked step. You girls in matching swimsuits. Remember Acacia? Before everything got so hard. It was beautiful, and it was aimed. With my mother, those were never different things. Then she reached into her purse and set an envelope on my table, and my chest tightened before I even saw the contents. Not an apology. A job application. Front desk. A dental practice off Broadway. Filled out in Daphne's looping hand, ready to send. She's going to work, see? Everything can go back. My mother smoothed the envelope like a bedsheet. I just need you to do one thing. The one thing. She laid it out with the tea steaming between us, and I'll give her this. She'd rehearsed. You'll talk to that detective Thursday. All you have to say is that you knew, that we'd discussed the power of attorney, that you'd agreed the family would step in if you ever got overwhelmed, and the letter was a misunderstanding. A mix-up with the doctor's office. You thought it was arranged. One sentence, baby, and this all goes away. They don't prosecute misunderstandings. She reached across my table and covered my hand with hers, and her hand was warm and dry and smaller than I remembered, and her eyes filled right on schedule. Families protect each other, Acacia. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. Christmas, Sunday dinners, your father, your sister, the whole table. All of it back, honey. All of it. Just the way it was. And then the closer, delivered soft as a hymn. Don't trade your whole family for a piece of paper. I want to freeze this frame for you because standing in my kitchen was the entire question I'd been living inside all year, wearing my mother's cardigan. Does protecting your family mean protecting them from consequences? Every woman raised to be the strong one knows this exact crossroads. Maybe not with a detective involved, but the shape is the same. The lie is always small. The family is always large. The math is always presented as obvious. My mother watched me with the eyes of a woman who had never once, in 61 years, seen this trade refused, because she herself had never refused it. She'd made it at 19 and called it love, ever since. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Ledger jumped down from the chair, and I heard myself ask her the only question I had left. Mom, are you sorry? She blinked, and I watched the question bounce off some inner surface and come back changed. Sweetheart, I hate what this is doing to. No, not sorry it's messy. Not sorry about the detective. Are you sorry you did it? The letter. My name. My mind. Mom. You put a disease in my chart that I don't have, and you were going to hand my sister my life's work while I stood there certified as broken. The steam had stopped rising off her cup. My mother sat up straighter and I saw her reach for the oldest tool on her belt, the one that had never once failed. "Everything I have ever done," she said, voice trembling exactly right. "I did for this family. Daphne needed a chance. You. Look at you. You always land upright, honey. You have since you were a baby. You didn't need it the way she does. Money sitting in an account, and my child drowning? What kind of mother would I be? Family doesn't." And I said it with her. Quiet, in unison. 34 years of harmony. Doesn't keep score. The sentence hung between us in two voices. Then I said the rest alone. "You're right, Mom. Family doesn't keep score. That's why you never noticed I was the only one paying." Something crossed her face that I had never seen before, the flicker of a cashier realizing, one instant too late, that the drawer has been counted. She tried tears. They were even real, I think. She tried volume, and the names she called me arrived secondhand, already worn by relatives in the group chat. Unstable, cold, calculated. She spat that one like a pit. And I remember thinking, yes, Mom, someone here calculated, and the arithmetic is in evidence. I did not raise my voice. It's the strangest thing I've learned this year. The closer I get to the center of my own life, the quieter it is in there. "Thursday, I'm going to sit with that detective," I said, "and tell the truth. Not a word more, not a word less. I won't build the case and I won't bury it. For once, Mom, what happens next isn't going to be paid for by me." She stood so fast the chair barked on the tile. "Then you are no daughter of mine. There are sentences you spend your whole childhood dreading, and when they finally arrive, they're almost a relief. The invoice, at last, in writing." I picked up her cup, cornflowers and all, and set it gently in the sink. Then I opened my front door and held it. "Drive safe, Mom." She left the soup. The lock clicked, soft as a period at the end of a long sentence, and somewhere inside that click was every Christmas I would never be invited to again. The Economic Crimes Unit works out of a building with all the charm of a filing cabinet, which honestly I found comforting. Thursday morning, 9 sharp, a conference room with carpet-colored carpet. The detective was younger than I expected and thorough in a way I respect. We went through the timeline the way I'd go through a client's shoebox of receipts. The dinner in March. The voicemail in April. I played it, and she noted it for what it was. Context, not evidence. The revocation. The liquidation. She smiled very slightly at the $8.50, the only editorial she allowed herself. The package at Whitfield. The letter. And then she slid the scan across the table one more time and asked if anything else stood out. I looked at my own name in that clinical font, and I told her the last true thing I had. The header has my name right, Acacia Rose Myers, but halfway down, one line calls the patient Acacia Ray. My middle name is Rose. My mother's best friend from school was named Ray. Mom always said she'd wanted it for one of us, and Dad overruled her. She's the only person alive who makes that slip. The detective wrote for a while. I signed the statement. Every page, initials in the corners, my whole name at the end, the rose where it belonged. It's a strange feeling, spending your signature like that. All my life, my signature had been a service. Tax returns, cosigns, witness lines, permission. This was the first one that cost me something and belonged entirely to me. Walking out into the parking lot, the sun was unreasonable, ordinary, bright. My phone buzzed. My father. "You've made your choice. No question mark." He was right for once, and I put the phone away and let him be. People sometimes ask if I regret it. Let me show you what the next 6 months actually looked like. Here's the honest accounting, because you've earned it. Nobody went to prison, and I never wanted that. My mother was accepted into a pretrial diversion program. First offense, restitution of the administrative costs, a class, a period of staying out of trouble, after which the charge gets dismissed. The system, it turns out, extends first-timers a grace my family never extended me. She tells the relatives it was a paperwork misunderstanding that Acacia blew up, and most of them find it easier to believe her because believing her costs nothing, and believing me costs Christmas. Dr. Hartwell's practice pressed their complaint, changed their verification procedures, and now confirms every letter by callback. One small clinic, slightly harder to forge. Daphne took the front desk job at the dental office, the exact application our mother filled out as a prop for my kitchen table, which is the closest thing this story has to a joke. She's apparently good at it. I always said she was capable. I just said it alone. My father is in the garage with the Bronco. Some men rebuild the same engine for decades so they never have to fix anything that talks back. Aunt Deb sends me pictures of her tomatoes and never asks me to come home, which is its own kind of love. My money sits at Clearline under one name, mine, with Marisol on a new power of attorney that springs only for licensed strangers, and my will leaves what I've built to a scholarship for first-generation accounting students. And in November, Whitfield closed out the old account and mailed me the balance. A check for $8.50. I didn't cash it. It's framed on the wall above my desk, next to a photo of Nana June, and on Tuesday nights, it hangs there behind me while I teach a free class at the library. Budgeting, beneficiaries, what a power of attorney really signs away, to a room of women, every one of whom, sooner or later, stays after to tell me about a signature they gave someone because they loved them. I used to believe love meant being the one who always pays, and here is what I know now. In every family that claims it doesn't keep score, somebody is quietly keeping it for you. So keep your own books, sign nothing out of guilt, and remember that $8.50 of truth is worth more than $145,000 of keeping the peace. That's my story. One forged letter, one emptied account, and $8.50 that finally got repaid. If this reminded you to check your own paperwork, your power of attorney, your beneficiaries, the names on your accounts, take that as your sign and do it this week. If you know someone who's always the responsible one, share this with her. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.